Okay, why don't we get going? Thank you for being here this evening. I'm Robert SanGeorge, as the slide says. My day job is that I'm graduate student career advisor in School of Public Affairs, but I also do a lot of presentations like this. Just in case you're wondering how or why I'm qualified to do this, I spent a long career in public policy, much of it abroad, working out of Europe and a bit out of Africa, and working on primarily environmental advocacy and then later on human rights for the United Nations. And that's enough about me. So we're here to talk about internships in government and public affairs and justice and law, and also international affairs, which I didn't quite put on the title. I'm not a big fan of unpaid internships, nor are most of you, I suspect. And that's the reason for that little cartoon on the title slide. However, I do recognize that for some of you, it is an important way to get your foot in the door, so to speak. Particularly, a lot of federal internships are paid, but they're not all paid, and that can be so the unpaid ones can be a way to get into the federal government, and also other parts of the job and of the employment sector, let's say. So let's start moving on. And I almost neglected to say, we'd like for you, if you would be so kind as to go into the chat and tell us how you heard about this webinar happening. We are constantly challenged at figuring out how to reach students who are bombarded by too much information, as I'm sure you probably would agree. And so it would be helpful for us to know how we can be more effective than at other times. And yeah, if you do that. Some people are already responding. Thank you. Appreciate it if everyone would do that. We've got a lot of people tonight, 27 and still growing, I think. Anyway, so first of all, plan ahead. And that means that you should have, at minimum, what we call a peer advisor, who are students who have been trained by career advisors to review resumes. Have them review your resume, all right, your most up-to-date version of your resume. And you may even want to do a 30-minute appointment with a career advisor. Now, at AU, there's a kind of a diffuse, decentralized system in some cases. Those of you who are COGAD students know that you should know that there's a COGAD Career Center. Those of you who are in SIS know that there's an SIS Career Center. The rest of you are part of the main Career Center, and you have advisors who are assigned to you. And it's very easy to make an appointment with a career advisor. You just go to Handshake and you figure out, well, actually, you should probably go to the AU Career Center website. That's american.edu/career center to figure out who your career advisor is. Then you can make an appointment with them via the Handshake system. But let's get back to your search, okay? Start your search early in the process. Some of you may be surprised to know that if you're looking for an internship for summer, the time to start is today, okay? Employers began posting summer 2024 internships in large numbers in early January, 3 weeks ago, all right? Now, that doesn't mean, don't panic, you may have missed a few, but there's lots more coming. In the past 4 or 5 days alone, I do posting for people in School of Public Affairs, but in the past 4 or 5 days alone, I've seen 20 or 25 internships. And so the period for summer internships, again, is January through early April, when employers tend to post the most internships for the summer. For the fall, when you're thinking about fall internships, you want to start thinking in May, early to mid-May, and then all the way through early to mid-August. After that, not going to be that many around. And what really kind of makes me sad is when a student comes to me in September and says, hey, I need an internship this fall. It's pretty much too late. There may be a few around, but not very many, if at all. and it's a tough go at that point in time. So fall internships, May through early August. Winter spring internships, you want to start thinking late September, no later than October 1st. And October and November, except for the week of Thanksgiving, are prime times for employers posting a lot of internships. And then it picks up again after Thanksgiving, and you will see a fair number of spring. And by the way, when we say spring, it means winter spring. January would never be confused with spring by most of you, I don't think, especially having just gone through January. But it's late September through December, pretty much. There might be a few left over in January, but probably not many. And think about if you are looking for an internship that's going to require a security clearance with a law enforcement agency, a federal law enforcement agency, or an intelligence agency, or some other kind of agency that just requires you to have a security clearance. The International Trade Administration, part of the Commerce Department, requires people to have security clearances. The State Department, you pretty much can't go to work there without having a security clearance, okay? So for those, you've got to think way ahead of time. For example, and probably the most extreme example, for summer 2024 internships with the CIA, the deadline for applying was, I believe, sometime in June, okay? That's because they don't need all that time to select people. They take a few months to select people, and then the rest of the time is for your security clearance, for them to investigate you and bring you in and ask you all kinds of intrusive questions and things like that. So think way ahead of time. Now, not all federal agencies are as demanding as the CIA with regard to how far ahead of time their internships, the security clearance issue works. But you should think 12 months ahead of time. And then if you realize that you still have 6 months, that's fine. But better to be checking into the time it takes or the deadlines for applying for federal agencies that require security clearances. Better to be 6 months early or 4 months early than to be 2 weeks late and realize you've missed your opportunity. Also, highly competitive management consulting firms. I'm talking about places like Deloitte Consulting. Booz Allen is another one in some cases. They often recruit summer interns during the previous fall, and in fact, that can start in September in many cases. So if you're thinking about some of those highly competitive management consulting firms, and the two I mentioned are not the only ones, you want to think way ahead of time for summer internships, okay? I don't see any questions, so I'm just going to keep rolling. Ask me questions at any time if I didn't say that already. If you ask about something I'm going to discuss in an upcoming slide, I'll ask you to be patient. If not, I'm happy to answer questions on the spot. So the most important thing I can say to you, one of the most important things, is that your speed of search and your speed of response is essential. What do I mean by speed of search? That means you want to set up your search so that if at all possible, you are seeing internships within 48 hours of the time they've gone online. And when you see an internship you really want to apply to, you do one of two things. You either apply immediately that day, or you apply no later than 24 hours more. And I'm speaking particularly here of paid internships, and secondly, internships with prestigious employers, big think tanks in DC, important corporations like the ones I just mentioned, big advocacy organizations, well-known places, the Sierra Club, for example, Amnesty International, places like that. You want to be applying quickly. The early bird gets the internship. Just to give you an example, and I've been told this by many employers at different times, they put up an internship and they make it available online on their own website or on, for example, idealist.org, which is an excellent place to look for nonprofit internships. They will get as many, a well-known employer and an employer who is paying will get as many as 100 applicants within 3 or 4 days. And within 48 hours, 50 to 75. And the thing is this, during that period of time, if they're asking you to send them an email with an attached resume and cover letter, you are falling down the email queue with every hour you delay. Now, I'm not trying to raise your anxiety level, but I am trying to emphasize that you need to act quickly, okay? Particularly for paid internships, and particularly for internships with even moderately well-known employers, okay? Yeah, not much else to say about that, but let's keep going. So that also means don't obsess over cover letters. Too many people tell me, oh, I have a lot of trouble starting a cover letter, so I have to start and stop over 3 or 4 different days before I can really get one done. No, that's not what you want to do. 80 to 90% of the time, an employer will make a decision on whether or not to give you an interview, not whether or not to get the internship, but whether or not to get an interview based solely on your resume. So what do you need to do, particularly with regard to cover letters? Put your name and your contact information at the top. The only address you need for the employer, you're not sending them snail mail, right? You're sending them an email, or you're uploading into an employer's own applicant database. So all you need to say is name of employer and their email address, for example. And then you don't need to find someone's name to say, dear, Jane Smith. You don't need that. You just say, dear hiring manager, something to that effect. All right. They don't expect you to know who they are. And in many cases, they're trying to prevent you from knowing who they are because they don't want to be bothered by 50 applicants. All right. I mean, being really candid here about how it works. I strongly suggest that for an internship, you should usually write 3, maybe 4 substantive paragraphs with a line space in between. And each paragraph would have no more than about 6 lines, not sentences, but lines. Okay. And you would emphasize, as I say here, you emphasize your research, your analytical skills, your written oral communication, any specialized skills you have. If they want somebody who speaks French and you speak French, you want to emphasize that, that sort of thing. The final paragraph should not be some long thing about how much you'd love to work for them and blah, 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 because they're not really reading at that point, at least not much. The last paragraph should say something like this. Thank you for considering my qualifications, and I look forward to hearing from you. Okay? So that's a cover letter, and keep it short and sweet and simple. Keep it easy to read. There is basically, think of it this way, there's an inverse relationship between the length of a cover letter and the likelihood somebody's going to read it. And I'm not kidding. The longer it is, the less likely they're going to read it, or the less likely they will read more than maybe the first paragraph or maybe 2. All right? So think short and sweet. Do not commit the I don't want to call it a sin, but do not commit the mistake of putting your resume on one side of your screen and the cover letter blank, page on the other side, and then start looking at your resume and think, okay, now I'm going to tell them about this, and now I'm going to tell them about that, and now I'm going to tell them about that. And the next thing you know, you've got 8 paragraphs, and you're in danger of running over onto another page, and nobody's going to read a cover letter that long. They're just not going to, especially for internships. Okay? So that's cover letters. Anybody got questions about it? I'm going to move on, but feel free, even if I moved on to another slide, to ask questions about the previous slide. Okay? Let's talk a bit about federal internships. Most federal agencies participate in something called the Pathways program. Some Pathways internships are part-time, some are full-time. Part-time usually means 25 hours a week, though. Okay, 20 to 25 hours a week. A lot of internships, not, I would say the majority, but probably, 40%, are posted with a warning that basically says only first 100 applicants to be considered, or only first 50 applicants are to be considered. Sometimes only first 250 to be considered. They do that because If they don't do that, they will get 1,000 applicants in 5 days, and they don't want to deal with 1,000 applicants. And so when you see an internship posting that says something like only first 100 applicants to be considered, what does that mean for you? That means drop everything and apply right now. We have here in the East Coast an advantage. We see those internships before the rest of the country does because they're still waking up. So if you see one of these Pathways internships at 10 o'clock in the morning and you can possibly do it, drop what you're doing and apply immediately, because you don't know when it's going to close off, when 100 people will have applied. Okay. Switching to a different subject, intelligence agencies maintain their own internship programs with long lead times, as I already explained. And if you're interested in various intel agencies or Homeland Security agencies, go to their websites and see what they say about it. Many of them do not post their internships on usajobs.gov. They will post it elsewhere. They'll send emails to people, to career advisors, to get the information out. Don't necessarily just rely on usajobs.gov for internship postings with intelligence agencies and national security agencies. Now, unpaid internships to get your foot in the door, which if you're a first-year student or a sophomore, can be necessary. The Department of Justice and the Treasury departments do volunteer internship programs. They hire, it appears, 200 interns or something like that. And they leave the internship application period open for something like 4 or 5 months. And typically they're only looking for 10 or 15 hours a week. So it can be a good way to get your foot in the door with those departments, excuse me. The International Trade Administration, the Export-Import Bank, and the Development Finance Corporation, all of which deal with various aspects of international trade and finance, for some reason, they all don't pay their interns. If you're interested in interning with any of those agencies, I would go to their websites and see what they say about internships. They do, however, post their unpaid internships on USA Jobs, all right? And their internships are running pretty much year-round. Finally, but not last but not least, there are literally 1,000 or more unpaid, what are called virtual federal service internships, VFSI. They typically are 10 hours, maybe 15 hours a week. In July, the virtual federal internship program is run by the State Department, and a lot of these unpaid internships are with state, but any federal agency can participate, and many of them do. You know, the Interior Department, the Transportation Department, the Labor Department, et cetera. They're virtual, so they're remote internships. They're 10 to 15 hours a week. It's a great way to get experience and to be able to put on your resume that you've been a federal intern. And, you know, if you're someone who is needing to work 20, 25 hours a week at a restaurant or in a nanny position or something like that, this can be a way potentially to still be able to cram something into your schedule that doesn't require you to go downtown and, you know, and all that commuting time and all that stuff. But it's a really good deal. The announcements come out, you got to check for it, look for the website, search for the website, Virtual Federal Internships, and starting after the 4th of July weekend, look for, you know, look every few days for when they're going to start posting those. And I think they allow you to apply to 3, okay? Maybe it's 5, 3 or 5. And I would apply to as many as they let you to apply for, and then see what, and apply quickly. So, you know, likely for those of you who are undergrads, you may not be in DC, you may be back home working at something or other, but think about this as a real opportunity, okay? Someone asks, let me put my glasses on here. Do you recommend not discussing prior experience in cover letters? No, you generally should, but that's a highly variable factor. It would depend upon what you're applying for and what your experience is. But for example, if you were applying for an internship with the Justice Department and you had done an internship that was significant and law related with, say, a prosecutor's office or a public defender's office, yes, you should highlight that in your cover letter. Yes. So that's just one example. If you have a follow-up question, let me know. Someone says, have I heard of students doing that? I think you mean the virtual federal service internships. I think, yeah. On top of another internship, or is that way too much? That depends on you, okay? I have talked to some amazing students over the years who are taking a full course load and working 2 internships totaling 40 hours a week. I don't recommend it, okay? It's a way to add a lot of stress to your life, but it depends on you, and it depends on how heavy your course load is, okay? I mean, we all know that 15 credit hours for one semester might not be nearly as much work as 15 credit hours a different semester. If you're a graduate student, 9 credit hours is usually way more work than you used to have as an undergrad in 15 credit hours. But again, it all depends on the courses you're taking, on your desire to do a lot of work, also your sense of self-discipline. A member of my family worked full-time while going to grad school full-time in a very demanding program at Kogod. And she said it was 2 years of no fun. And that, was pretty much the way it is. So it depends on you. It depends on your capacity for that much work. And also, you don't want to burn out, right? So that's the best I can say without a one-on-one advising with you. And by the way, I only advise students in School of Public Affairs, basically seniors and grad students. But you've all got career advisors available to you. I don't see another question. Oh, wait a minute, there's one. Should students explain gaps in their resume in a cover letter? No, don't highlight your gap unless, if you were ill with a serious illness for 2 years and and maybe you weren't even in school, maybe you want to mention that in a cover letter, but not in the first paragraph, okay? I mean, I've occasionally advised students who have those kind of serious problems, or maybe they were taking care of a family member who was seriously ill. Those things happen. And if you've got those kind of gaps and you think it's pretty significant, then yes, you should probably explain it, but don't go into some long explanation. You may notice that from 2020 to 2022, I was not in school, or I was not working, or whatever. This was due to whatever it was due to, your illness or a family member's illness, and then just leave it at that and go on. Anything that requires a long explanation sounds defensive, and you don't need to be defensive about it, and you shouldn't be defensive about it. Okay, but for example, if we're talking about a gap like you did 2 internships your sophomore year, and then you missed your fall of your junior year, and then you're back doing an internship in the spring of your junior year. So you went 1 semester without an internship. That's not a gap. Don't worry about that. Okay. I hope that's useful. Any advice to graduate students on how to balance heavy course workload and internship hunting? I do that all the time in terms of advising grad students how to do that. It's a lot of self-discipline. And to quote a member of my family, it meant that there was no fun except for an occasional Saturday night. I mean, I kind of went through that myself as a grad student a long time ago, but it's just a strong sense of self-discipline and understanding when you're going to get work done is the best I can tell you. I mean, I need to know a lot more specifics, and I don't think you want to discuss that over the chat here. So let's keep going. Done with this slide, I believe. And where will you search? Okay, are you looking for government? Government is not just the federal government, which I know is an overwhelming presence in DC, for obvious reasons. But there's also state and local governments, including state and local governments in this area, that hire interns in a variety of different ways. Okay. Are we talking about federal contractors? A major portion of activity done by the federal government is outsourced to contractors. And really, contractors work for every part of the federal government except for the White House and the judiciary, the courts and Congress. All the executive branch agencies all use contractors in various ways. An extreme example is the U.S. Agency for International Development, which outsources probably 95% of what it does to contractors. And the agency exists primarily as a supervisor of contractors. Okay, that's not the way most federal agencies work, but that's one that does it that way. But there's a lot of opportunity with federal contractors in terms, and as I say, they work for all the different federal agencies. So there are opportunities, a lot of opportunities that are fairly broad. What about the nonprofit community? It's a very large sector. 600,000 people work for nonprofits in the DC area. Those are jobs, not internships. But, most, if not the vast majority of nonprofits do internships. And I will tell you, I've been at AU since 2008, okay? And in that time, I have seen things move from maybe 1/3 of all internships being paid way back when, okay, 15 years ago, something like that, 16 years ago, to now it being unusual to see unpaid internships, except with very small nonprofit organizations. Medium-sized and larger nonprofits have mostly been shamed into paying their interns. Now, what do they pay? Well, it varies in one of two ways. If they pay minimum wage, as you probably know, that's going to be around $15 an hour, at least in DC and Maryland. I'm not sure what it is in Virginia. It might be a bit lower. And then there are employers that offer what they call stipends, okay? That's a way of getting around minimum wage, quite candidly, in most cases. And I've seen internships where they want you to work 30 hours a week, and they're going to pay you a $500 stipend at the end of the semester. And I get a little bit annoyed at this, as I think you can tell, on your behalf. And whenever I have an opportunity to tell employers, without being, nasty about it, I try to emphasize that students really want to be paid. That they are the idea that most of the people going to college don't really need the money is not true. It's the exact opposite of the truth. And so you need to look, when you're looking at an internship announcement, if it says stipend, but it doesn't say how much, it's perfectly legitimate for you to send them an email. I would attach a cover letter and resume, but I would say, can you please tell me how much the stipend is that you will pay if they don't say? And if they say an internship is paid, but they don't say how much, that's unusual. Usually when they say it's paid, they will tell you what it's paid. Typically that ranges from minimum wage of $15 an hour to upwards of $23 to $25 an hour if they're looking for special skills. Like if they're looking for someone who's bilingual to work in another language, or certain specialized software skills. Employers tend to pay more to interns who work in data analytics and other quant-related internships. The corporate sector. Okay, the corporate sector is kind of an odd thing in DC because you've got the federal government, you've got nonprofits, you've got federal contractors, some of whom are for-profit, but the profits they can make are heavily restricted by the federal government, and the amount of money they can pay to most of their employees is also under the control of the federal government. So a lot of those jobs pay pretty much the same. The internships, assuming they're paid, are going to be in that same $15, $23 an hour range and up. Don't expect benefits. They're not going to give you health insurance. They might pay commuting benefits, okay? So they might pay you, I don't know, $100 a month to use the metro, for example. They probably won't give you a computer. And by the way, a lot of internships are hybrid. Okay, a lot. What percentage? I would say the majority these days. It's obviously this is a carryover from the pandemic. And typically I will see announcements that say, it's a 25-hour-a-week internship. We hope you'll work. We would like you to work 3 days a week, and 2 of those days should be in the office, or maybe 1 of those days should be in the office. It depends. All right. But if you're working hybrid, they will generally be expecting you to use your own laptop. All right. So that's that. Any other questions at this point? Someone says, yes, those stipends are very frustrating, and I have encountered them many times. Yeah, so you know what I mean. Getting back to the corporate sector, law firms are for-profit, partnerships, and a lot of consulting firms, political consulting firms, they make a fair amount of money, and they do that. A lot of the for-profits that you will run into in terms of seeking internships are either going to be for-profit government contractors, which are, as I say, are limited in what they can do. They're not totally free as non-government contractors are, or they're consulting firms in some way, whether it's political consulting, management consulting, law firms, etc. Okay. Anybody with questions about that, I'm happy to speak more about it. Now, I want to talk about focusing your search. Okay. And I go through all these, this sort of inverted pyramid. You want to be doing research, and you want to use as many contacts as you have, whether it's family, friends, or fellow students, or professors, or what. But you want to be asking yourself a question: what do I want to be, and where do I want to be? Where that can mean 2 things. If you're looking for a summer internship back in your hometown, New York City, Chicago, wherever, that's a different deal than DC. There are likely, outside of New York City, there's likely to be a lot fewer internship opportunities than there are. And DC is internship heaven because it's DC, because of the government, because of the contractors, and because of the nonprofits. All right. Where also means, what kind of employer, what kind of internship am I looking for? Am I looking for a research internship? Am I looking for an internship where you're sort of a program coordinator, where you're working on an operational level, and you're helping make things move along? If it were a railroad, you'd be trying to keep the trains running. All right. What employment sector? I mean, this varies incredibly widely. In general, there's the federal government, the contractors, the for-profit corporations, and the nonprofit sector. Those are the full 4 big sectors. But then within that, like within nonprofits, you've got all these different organizations in terms of their subject matter, whether it's environment or labor or reproductive health or public affairs, etc. Okay. Also, am I more interested in working for a large employer, which may well pay a little bit better in terms of salary? That is not salary, but your internship money that they pay you. And do I want to work for a larger employer which is a bigger name, and it's going to be better on my resume to say that I've worked for Amnesty International, okay, or the American Red Cross, versus working for a much smaller organization. However, I will say, when you work for a smaller organization, you're likely to be paid less. It's a lot more likely it's going to be an unpaid internship. The only real advantage is small employers will usually let you do a variety of things, and you may well have a better learning experience. Okay. Can I do attractive but unpaid internships? Yes. I mean, I've already talked about that issue. You want to identify specific employers and find the relevant postings. We'll talk about where to find those in a moment. Apply very promptly, as I've mentioned. Prepare for interviews. We'll talk a little bit about that. As negotiation, the only thing you can really negotiate for an internship is when you're going to start, what hours you're going to work during business hours. They're pretty much, most of the time, they're not going to want you to work at times that are not business hours. And that's about it, really. And then you show up for work. and it looks like we've got more questions. Can I talk more about where to look? I will. Let me get back to that, and if I don't do it sufficiently, prompt me again, okay? But let's keep going. Use search terms effectively when you're searching. There are functional search terms like management consulting or public affairs or policy analysis, lobbying, okay? Subject areas. Now we're talking about basically policy subjects. Healthcare policy, children's rights, refugees, reproductive health, civil rights, social justice, transportation, housing, homelessness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, okay? That's how you use search terms in doing that. Now, whoops, I missed a really important page there. Sorry to go by that. Best internship search tools. People can use at @AU_SBA careers. I maintain that, okay? It's a Twitter account that posts about, on average, about 100 internships monthly, probably 95 to 98% of them paid, okay? These internships are relevant to people in School of Public Affairs. So they're heavily policy focused, which of course is what we're basically talking about tonight, right? Government, public affairs, justice and law, et cetera, okay? I will admit, student, it is a private account. Why? Because I keep out all the Georgetown and GW students, as well as students from any other university, okay? And I get lots of requests because a lot of other schools don't have anything like this tool available. If you're not in the School of Public Affairs, you can still get in. What you need to do is you log into Twitter, you go to that address at @AU_SBA careers. It will say something like, tweets are protected. Click follow to request access. So you click follow. That sends me a direct message over Twitter. It is not going to ring bells and flash lights when you send it. I check that account a couple times a day. And assuming I can identify you so that I can check with the AU Registrar's Office database that you really are a student or a recent alum, then you're in. But if you've got something that kind of obscures who you are for whatever reason, you're going to have to send me an email that says, hey, I've requested access. This is my Twitter handle. And what else? Yeah, please let me in. Now I'm going to give you, I should have done this before, but let me do it right now. My email address. And just one small thing I have to correct. So in the chat is my email address, all right? So if you've got a Twitter handle that doesn't resemble your name, email me to tell me this is my Twitter handle and I've requested access, all right? Happy to let you in. Right now, by the way, month of January, I probably posted 175 internships. There were a lot, there was just this tsunami of internships that came in fairly early, frankly. Usually they don't start heavily until February, but they started this month. Idealist.org, only nonprofits can post there. Candidly, idealist.org is better for job searching than internship searching, but you will find some internships posted there. The Climate Reality Project, really good organization working on climate issues, founded by former Vice President Al Gore. They just, within the last few days, posted some interesting internships paid. LinkedIn is the best of the big job search engines, but you can also, I left the word job out of that. It's not a search engine, it's a job search engine. But it also is a place where you can find internships. And Indeed.com and Glassdoor.com are also good mainstream job and internship search engines, okay? Twitter, and I'm not talking about my own Twitter account, Twitter in general has a lot of information streams, and people, that is employers, may occasionally announce internships on Twitter. So you may want to follow a particular company or more likely the human resources department of a particular employer to see how they see what they're doing. Handshake has a lot of internship postings, and a lot of the internship postings on Handshake are unpaid. but there are some paid ones. Okay. Can I talk more about where to look for? Oh yeah, I said I'm going to get to that, and I will. I promise. When you're using LinkedIn and Indeed.com, especially LinkedIn, limit your search to the last 7 days or 14 days. And it's going to ask you to define a search radius around DC. You should say 25 miles because that's about the limit of the metro system. I've already given you some advice on search terms. They have both of these, LinkedIn and Indeed, have something they call a remote filter. I wouldn't use it. It's generally useless. And I don't want to explain why. I just know because I've tried it a lot of times. All right. And make sure that when you are using these job search engines that, excuse me, you have filtered for only internships, right? That you're not also getting jobs. There also is typically a filter called company that allows you to focus on one employer. Why would you want to do that? Don't try to estimate what they're going to pay you in an internship. I pretty much told you what that is going to mean, okay? So that's using the filters. These are AU's overall career resources on Twitter. I shamelessly bolded my own that I do. There's also an SIS Careers one, an SOC Careers, CAS Careers, there's Kogod Biz, and the main AU Career Center. I don't think they really post internships or jobs on it, but it has a lot of jobs related information on it at AU Career Center. Okay. So let's keep going. Now, networking with alumni. Get asked these questions a lot. The best thing to do is not to ask me or a career advisor, do you know anybody who works at AARP and you could recommend them to talk to me? We don't really work that way that much because trying to keep track of thousands of alumni, frankly, 100,000 who change jobs, every once in a while is virtually impossible. So we'd need 10 times as many people as we have to do this stuff. There is something called Alumni Fire. If you go into Handshake and you look on the left side of the main Handshake page of the navigation bar there will be a link called Resources. You click on that, and then there'll be a menu of different things, which will include Alumni Fire. The last time I looked, about 3,500 alumni had registered on Alumni Fire to volunteer to help people find jobs and internships in the field relevant to whatever they're working in. So these are people who have volunteered to work with you. Okay, there's no charge for this. You can sign up in a multitude of ways with your email, via LinkedIn or Facebook, and it's a good tool. Okay, let's keep going. Now, I realize I'm getting to the summing up part, and I haven't talked about where to look for corporate, public affairs, or law internships. For law, and maybe I should start typing this in. The American Bar Association has its own search function for that, which it's better for jobs. A little unclear as to where to find internships. A lot of law-related internships, let's talk about that, some of them are going to be on my Twitter account, frankly, as well as corporate public affairs. I tweet a lot of corporate public affairs jobs and internships, for that matter. Sorry. In terms of other places, I would try to identify some of the major, in public affairs, okay? I would try to identify some of the major public affairs firms, and I would bookmark their careers page to be able to search for internships with them probably once a week. Most employers don't change their internship and job postings very often. Who are the major public affairs firms? I mean, there's a ton of them, right? But, in particular, there's one called APCO, APCO worldwide. There's another one called Fleshman Hilliard. Those are two of the very, very biggest. But frankly, the best way to find that stuff, aside from my own Twitter account, and this would go for both law related and public affairs related, would be to do searches on LinkedIn.com and or on Indeed, and for use search terms like legal internship, or if you're looking to work for a prosecutor, narrow the search term down to prosecutor office internships or something like that. For public affairs firms, public affairs internships. You probably alternatively would use the term public relations. Those major job search engines, especially LinkedIn.com, work really well, but it's a matter of smart searching, using the filters so that you're narrowing down and you're not looking at internships that were posted 6 months ago. And by the way, there is a filter you will see both on Indeed and on LinkedIn.com called date posted. It's really important that you use that filter, and probably tell it that you only want to look at things posted in the past week, at most in the past month. Otherwise, it will open it up to show you things that were posted in the last 5 or 6 months, and those are long gone, as I'm sure you realize, okay? So those are my best suggestions in terms of your question about corporate public affairs or law internships, all right? Also know that there are for-profit firms in this area that are law firms, lobbying firms, and public affairs firms. They're a Swiss Army knife. They will be whatever you, the client, wants them to be. And I post a lot of that out, again, on my Twitter account. And you can also search LinkedIn in particular, or Indeed.com would be probably the best places. Also, Glassdoor.com can be quite useful for that. So to sum up, and I have a couple more things to mention after this slide, but have somebody who really knows how to review your resume. Today, I talked to a couple of seniors, among other people, who really needed very significant changes in their internship because they just weren't going about it in the right way. And start your search early in the internship posting cycle. Search several times weekly. If we're talking about using LinkedIn, probably 3 times a week, if you got the time to do it, at least. And if you're going to do it that often, then just tell it to give you the last week of postings. All right. Apply immediately to interesting positions. Don't be slowed down by writing a cover letter. I'm not going to repeat myself again as to what that means. And prepare for interviews by reading up on the employer. And there are fact sheets. All the career centers have fact sheets on interviewing. Really important when you do an interview that you are 2 things. You are upbeat and energetic, because who would hire somebody who's not, right? And my suggestion is to give you a kind of baseline metric. Let's say you're looking toward the summer, right? This summer, I would be applying to 3 to 5 internships a week. 3 a week minimum, not only 3, but minimum in February. And by March, I'd be applying to 5 a week, okay? If you applied to 5 internships a week just in March and April, that would be 40 internships. And while that, you may think, boy, that's crazy. Why do I have to apply to that many? Because you want to leverage all those numbers in your favor and get the best offer possible. That's why, okay? So someone says, if you're switching careers and trying to break into a new career path in grad school, how do you suggest searching for new internships if you've already done internships in the old career? That's a good question, and one that probably you need to discuss with a career advisor to talk about. For example, in school of public affairs, I often talk with graduate students who are making career transitions, and it's really a one-on-one, individualized conversation. It's really hard for me to answer that. The big problem is, let's say you've been working in a career, you've been a high school teacher for 6 or 7 years, and the thought of teaching anymore, teenagers, drives you crazy. So you're trying to switch careers, and you're 28 years old, and you're thinking about an internship, whereas the employer is thinking they're going to get an intern who is 20. Okay. You know, there's issues involved with that, but it is not insurmountable. This can happen. A lot of it depends on a good cover letter, on being very focused with your resume, but it's a very individualized exercise that you need to go through with a career advisor. Okay. Anything else about any of this? Okay, I'm gonna, now, if you give me a moment here and hang on, I'm gonna get out of this presentation because I need to, unfortunately, the slides I'm about to show you, come on, there we go, are up here. Please don't mind my photo of my family there. There we are. Okay, so a couple of other things that you should know about. These are slides from a colleague of mine who, as you can see, used a very different format than I did. That's okay. What kind of employer events are there that where you can connect directly with employers? There are what we call meetups. Employer in residence does not mean they're living on campus, but they spend a lot of time here, okay? And they will be available at tables, or they will be available in the Maine AU Career Center to meet for 15-minute discussions one-on-one. The pop-up tables we already talked about. Networking receptions, really important. There are a number of those throughout the year, and they're an opportunity to mingle with employers in a less formal setting, but show up and dress as if you're dressed for a job interview. Don't show up in a hoodie and jeans, all right? And be ready to give your elevator pitch, okay? That's a 30 to 45-second introduction of yourself. You know, what year you're in, your major, when you're graduating, and what you're interested in, and end it with a question. What are the prospects of someone like me getting an internship with your company, with your agency, all right? And then there are the job and internship fairs, and in particular, Spring 2024 Job and Internship Fair is going to be virtual via Handshake. It's going to be 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Wednesday, March 27, okay? Why is it virtual and not in person? Because they're doing something in Bender. They're reconstructing stuff, and we can't have a job fair there, which we usually would do it in the Bender arena.
Rob, if I can jump in.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I was actually happy to cover these 2 slides, but thank you for getting it started.
Oh, you were going to do that. I didn't know that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's no worries. But you did a great explanation of those. And I'll just plug in a few other events that are coming up that are relevant, that might be relevant to the audience here. As Rob mentioned, we do offer networking receptions that are industry-based. So we host those in the spring and the fall. And this spring, we will be hosting advocacy, legislation, and policy networking reception. So if you all want to mark your calendars for that, on February 20th, that'll be on campus in Constitution Hall. And we'll share these. I have a PDF that I can throw in the chat that has the links for that too. And then,
yeah, then there's this slide.
Yeah, and then last but not least is some additional resources that you as an AU student has access to. The first one that I just wanted to touch on was Go Government, which is a federal internship finder that we highly recommend students use. You can go in and filter based on your career field, based on specific agencies you might be looking to work for. And it's a great tool to use, as Rob mentioned, a great way to get your foot in the door when it comes to securing internships. The second resource on this page is Parker Dewey, which is a platform that you can use to search for micro internships. And those are primarily short-term projects or assignments that are offered through partnered organizations. And they can be quick, like a couple of hours or to a couple of weeks, those projects. So those are nice projects that you can maybe slide into your schedule to do on the side just to make some extra cash. And also a great way to get your foot in the door with different organizations. Parker Dewey is also a great resource if you're maybe looking to figure out what you might like to do. It can be a great way to try different projects and figure out what career path you might want to take. So recommend that resource as well. Thirdly is our part-time jobs near campus map, which is a resource that's listed on Handshake. So Rob had mentioned it earlier. On Handshake, there is a resource tab. And if you type in part-time jobs near campus map, it'll populate a map that highlights the different organizations within the Tinleytown, Friendship Heights neighborhood areas. You might not necessarily find, there are some internships that are offered through organizations in the area, and then there's also paid part-time opportunities. And that's just a great way to make some quick cash, but also could be a foot in the door for internship opportunities as well. And then last but not least is Quad Jobs. So AU is partnered with Quad Jobs, and through this platform, local short-term gigs and part-time work is offered, such as babysitting, office work, retail, dog walking, and so forth. So we do encourage students to use this platform as well to maybe find those quick buck jobs that you might want to do in the midst of your internship search, or as a foot in the door as well. So again, we recommend these platforms in addition to Handshake when you're going through your job and internship search. Yeah, you can jump in. Oh, you're muted, Rob.
Yeah,
There
we
you
do
go.
have a question that probably you might answer. What should we expect at employer meetups, networking receptions, job fairs, career conversations? Should we bring a resume, and should we be formally dressed? Well, formally dressed means tuxedos and evening gowns. I'm sure that's not what you meant. You meant business dressed. Yes, you should be business dressed.
Yes.
And anytime you're going to meet an employer, you should be. And I'll say a couple of things, and then I'd like you to jump in, Darnese.
Yeah, sure.
With regard to job fair, normally for an in-person job fair, you show up, in business attire. And for a 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. job fair, your best bet is to show up at 12:45, 15 minutes early. At 1 p.m., we start swiping people in with their IDs, and you will be on the floor of the arena ahead of everybody else. And it's a lot easier to talk to employers then, and you're not in as many lines. Anyway, that's all for an in-person job fair, which hopefully we are going to be able to resume come the fall. But in terms of the spring, it's a virtual job fair. And I mean, I know a little bit about that, but probably Darnese knows more than I do.
Yeah, so you covered that well. As far as the virtual job fair, there won't be an opportunity to really share your resume on there, but we also encourage, students to follow up with who they may have spoken with after the fair, connect on LinkedIn, and maybe you can share your resume in that format, in that manner. And when it comes to what you should expect at these type of events, as far as the employer meetups, networking receptions, well, as far as the meetups, they're usually presentations and then Q&A, and the employers stick around and talk with students afterwards. And that's just a great way to learn about the organization, 2, network, and 3, get an insider's perspective on the application and internship interview process and so forth. So again, a great way to meet in person or virtually directly with employers.
The networking receptions are, they're typically going to be held in that there's a big kind of stand-up room in whatever that building is, Constitution Hall, right?
Constitution Hall, yes.
Across the street on Nebraska Avenue, and the thing there is, to just be able to work the room and not be shy about going up to an employer and approaching them and talking to them, and not just hanging back while everybody else talks. Okay. And have that sort of elevator pitch ready, or have ready whatever question you want to ask them. You don't necessarily have to do an elevator pitch to start talking to them. You could just ask a question, but an elevator pitch can help. And yeah, so that's the networking stuff. Job fairs, normally you're going to go into an arena. There's going to be 100 or more employers there, and you should have a list that you've made of, okay, who are the top 5 or top 10 employers I want to talk to. You want to have that planned out ahead of time. Yes, you should bring printed resumes with you, although much of the time they're going to say, here's a piece of information, and you should upload your resume into this. And someone says, I have a class until 2:30 on the day of the job fair. How badly will that hurt my chances to speak to employers there? Well, if you can start right after 2:30, if you can take your laptop and just go off in a corner somewhere, you know, that there will still be an hour and a half left. All right. In terms of talking directly to them, though, unfortunately, in these virtual fairs, that is more limited than it is when you can just walk up to them in the gym. Anything more to say about that, Darnice?
Yeah, so I'll just add that as far as the virtual fair goes, you should still have some time to meet with employers after 2:30, but we do want to emphasize setting up your schedule ahead of time when you register for the fair. So the registration for this specific fair does open on March 6th. So when that opens, you want to be able to set up your schedule as far as one-on-one chats with employers or the group sessions. And there's a list of times where each employer lists when they'll be hosting those throughout the fair duration of the fair. So you want to make sure that you schedule your, put together your schedule in a way where you can meet with those employers anytime after 2:30.
And also, I mean, a lot of these employers, correct me if I'm wrong, Darnice, will generally limit the number of students they will talk to at any one time in a virtual fair.
Correct.
It might be 20, it might be 40. I mean, am I correct about that?
Yes, you are.
So that you know, makes it doubly important that when we open up the registration for this, that you get in there early, register not only for the job fair itself. I mean, that's going to be wide open. You won't be blocked out of the job fair.
Right.
But register as the employers open up their own sessions that they're going to do with either individual students or with groups of students.
Yes.
And what are the dates? What's the date again for the job fair registration?
So registration will open on March 6th.
Okay. Okay, I don't have anything else to say. I don't see any more questions. No. So that's, oh, wait a minute. Someone, just when I said that, I think someone asked one. If you are switching careers and trying to break into a new career path in grad school, how do you suggest searching for new? Oh, wait a minute. I did answer that question. That's right. I don't know why I thought I had already answered. Anyway, okay. So if you are a senior or grad student in the School of Public Affairs and you wanted to meet with me more, you can do that. Make an appointment via handshake. Other students should look to their advisors in their various schools, some of whom are part of the main career center, some of whom would be within SIS or COGAD at their own career centers. And I will be looking right after this for people who have asked for access onto the Twitter account. And again, remember my email address, robert.sangeorge@america.edu, if your Twitter handle does not resemble your name, so that I'll know, I'll be able to check to confirm that you are indeed a student at AU. So thank you very much and good night.